Greetings and salutations, all my fellow American sovereigns. This is the Vocational Science of Freedom Saturday night civics and sovereignty class. And tonight will be our 7th reading of Conspirators' Hierarchy, a book written by Dr. John Coleman. And it's a book that was written back in the 90s, 92. So as we're going through this, as I've said before as a caveat, that some of the players that we're talking about in this book reading are no longer going to be in power. They're not going to be sometimes even alive in some cases. So the point is, with going through this reading, is that we focus on the what, not so much the who. So what are the organizational hierarchy structures of the global Luciferian occultists? What do they run? How do they run them? Whatever that what may be. And where are they located? How do they connect to other organizations? Right? So what we're looking at is to discover the 3D model of the global power structure, the occulted global power structure, as it exists now, by taking a snapshot back in 92 by the reading of this book to help us determine exactly what that is. Okay. So from that, I'll start back up. And where we left off last time was we were talking about and going through the opium wars, talked about the opium trade, the fact that Hong Kong is the place where all of the gold around the world tends to get traded because it's all on a basis of what is done with the heroin trade. And we talked about who the major players were, particularly in England, which are many of the royal houses and whatnot, and scattered around Europe as well, but more focused around England. And then we left off here at what on earth is the Bank of International Settlements? So, to continue. So, this is precisely the way the Bank of International Settlements and the IMF are operating, meaning that they're basically just gigantic laundering banks for drug trade and have been basically since the Opium Wars. So, let me say without hesitation that both these banks are nothing more than bully boy clearinghouses for the drug trade. The BIS undermines any country that the IMF wants to sink by setting up ways and means for the easy outflow of flight capital. Nor does BIS recognize nor make any distinction when it comes down to what is flight capital and what is laundered drug money. The BIS operates on gangster lines. If a country will not submit to asset stripping by the IMF, then it says in effect, quote, right, then we'll break you by means of huge cache of narcotic dollars we are holding, close quote. It is easy to understand why gold has demonetized and substituted with a paper dollar as the world's reserve currency. Of course, and this is something that has been going on for a very long time. And of course, we got our central bank of international drug traffickers set up in 1913, right along with the IRS and the FBI and the ADL. So no coincidences there. But it wasn't until Nixon came into office that the convertibility of the US dollar into gold was removed. So, and I think that was probably something that they forced him to do. It gets into a little bit of that later on in here. But the main point is that the single largest economy in the entire world is and has been for several hundred years the drug trade, whether that be mostly heroin and now a lot cocaine and now even some of it being fentanyl, but fentanyl really isn't a drug trade. Fentanyl is really a way to smuggle poison through the drug trade into a populace that you want to kill. That's what fentanyl is. Okay, so to continue with the banks. All right. So it is not as easy to blackmail a country holding gold reserves as it is to blackmail one having its reserves in paper dollars, which, of course, is the reason why the filthy international Khazarian mob wants every single nation in the world to have a central bank. And any of the nations that don't have a central bank or are not beholden to the Rothschilds are, of course, the worst and most evil countries in the entire planet, according to the Associated Press, which, of course, they also own. So the IMF held a meeting in Hong Kong a few years ago, which was attended by a colleague of mine, and he told me the seminar dealt with this very question. He informed me that the IMF agents told the meeting that they could literally cause a run on any country's currency using narco dollars, which would precipitate a flight of capital. Reynard Gutt, Credit Suisse delegate and member of the Committee of 300, said he foresaw a situation where national credit and national financing would be under one umbrella organization by the turn of the century. Well, they almost got there. They still have a few countries to take out, but they've taken out quite a few since 92. So, while Reynard Gutt did not spell it out, everybody at the seminar knew exactly what he was talking about. From Colombia to Miami, from the Golden Triangle to the Golden Gate, from Hong Kong to New York, from Bogota to Frankfurt, the drug trade, and more especially the heroin trade, is big business. And it is run from the top down by some of the most, quote unquote, untouchable families in the world. And each of those families has at least one member who is on the Committee of 300. It is not a street corner business, and it takes a great deal of money and expertise to keep it flowing smoothly. The machinery under control of the Committee of 300 ensures this. Such talents are not found on the street corners and subways of New York. To be sure, the pushers and peddlers are an integral part of the trade, but only as a very small part-time salesman. I say part-time because if they're caught and rivalry gets some of them shot, but what does it matter? There are plenty of replacements available. No, it's not anything the Small Business Administration would be interested in. It's big business, a vast empire, this dirty drug business. Of necessity, it is operated from the top down in every single country in the world. It is, in fact, as I said, the largest single enterprise in the world today, transcending all others. That it is protected from the top down is borne out by the fact that, like international terrorism, it cannot be stamped out, which could indicate a reasonable person that some of the biggest names in royal circles, the oligarchy, the plutocracy, are, in fact, running it, even if it is done through intermediaries. The main countries involved in growing poppy and coca bush are Burma, North China, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, Thailand, Lebanon, which will probably soon be taken over by Israel, Turkey, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia. Colombia does not grow coca bush, but next to Bolivia is the main refiner of cocaine and the chief financial center of the cocaine trade, which, since General Noriega, who was, I believe Noriega was the president of Panama, I think? No. Colombia, sorry. Was kidnapped and it was Panama, because they went down and literally just kidnapped Noriega. Kidnapped and imprisoned by President Bush is being challenged by Panama for first place in money laundering and capital finance of the cocaine trade. The heroin trade is financed by Hong Kong banks, London banks, and some Middle East banks, such as the British Bank of the Middle East. Lebanon is fast becoming the quote-unquote Switzerland of the Middle East. Well, it depends on how much Israel decided to bomb the fuck out of it at the moment in 2025. But countries involved in the distribution and routing of heroin are Hong Kong, Turkey, Bulgaria, Italy, Monaco, France, meaning Corsica and Marseilles, Lebanon, and Pakistan. The United States is the largest consumer of narcotics. First place going to cocaine, which is being challenged by heroin. Now, why in the holy fuck do you think that little sentence happens to be true? I've got an idea, right? Because it's the single greatest location of white people in the world, particularly ones with money and capacity and freedom. So that's why they push it here harder than any other place in the world. Because they want us all dead. And how easy it was to get fentanyl into all that and just bring it on in, right? Because if everybody's got a nose full of fent, all they got to do is just crank up the delivery and poof, you get rid of a lot of people at once. Now, are people that have fentanyl up their nose necessarily people that are all that productive? Probably not. That's not the point. The point is that it's to cause chaos and to destroy free republics. And yes, Janice, that's a good point. People that are free and have resources and have the ability to succeed and challenge the current global world order that they're trying to build, that is the United States. We are basically the only ones left, unless, of course, England does go full civil war, which wouldn't surprise me if they do, considering what's going on there at the moment. We are the last battlefront, if you will, for freedom, for personal sovereignty, self-reliance, self-governance, self-defense, and self-awareness. We're it. And no one is coming to save us. No one. You're it. You listening to this right now, you're it. You are the last line of defense of freedom on this planet. Okay? I'm not saying that to scare anybody. I'm saying it's important to understand that. And I'm saying that it's important to tribe the fuck up. Get to know other people that realize these types of things. Get to know people that understand that they're sovereign. Get to know other people that are prepared. In fact, one of the gentlemen in the VSOF this evening dropped a nice little course that he created regarding how to teach children about prepping and how to keep children so that they keep the secrets of the house. Like, you don't go around to your friends at school and say, hey, dad's got 10 guns, or hey, we have a whole warehouse full of food, right? Children will tend to brag if you don't tell them that they shouldn't. And so things like that are important. And yeah, that's right. It was basically a course in kids OPSEC. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I'm going to finish that up and edit it if I even need to finish anything in it. That particular gentleman is usually pretty good with his writing, so I probably don't need to finish anything, but I will proofread it and we'll probably do a class on it at some point. Because we're it, okay? That's it. You better be aware of that. And you better be ready for it, because that's what's happening. And yeah, Dave, good point. Trust the plan, anyone? I don't think there's much to trust anymore about anything. Okay? Don't trust any politician. Don't trust any attorney. Don't trust any cop. Don't trust any judge. Don't trust anybody that has anything to do with the totality of this slave system. That's it. It's that simple. And you have to remove your consent, people. And I mean all of it. Get rid of those contracts. Understand the presumptions that they hold over you. Okay? And if you don't know what those presumptions are, you can go watch the VSOF presumptions class. I laid them all out for everybody, what they were, as far as law is concerned and how they see you. Because trust me, the last presumption that they're going to put on everybody has been put on everybody in the past. It's a term that most people would probably be familiar with, and it's called the useless eaters, also known as bread gobblers. Now, seeing as how I just brought up this point, I'd also like to warn everybody. This is the end of October 2025. When November comes around in 1 week, everyone, there will be so many people who have, for generations, been getting their groceries for free from the United States government. Will no longer have them. That might very well be the single event that sparks off total civil unrest in America. You're talking about millions of people that have been just sucking on the tit, as I said, for generations of their family. They do not know how to be self-reliant. And when they feel like it, they have no problem with stealing anything, which includes whatever might be in your house. So, truth be told, if you don't own a weapon yet, and I mean a firearm, you've got 1 fucking week to get one. Or you've got 1 fucking week to get the hell out of the cities. Either way. But depending on the demographics of the particular place that you may be, the country also might not be safe either. So just make sure that you know your neighbor. Make sure that you guys have a plan. Make sure that you guys can contact each other, even if the electricity goes out. I don't care if it's by SOS, by high-powered lights in each other's windows. I don't care. Figure it out. Because by the end of October, if it keeps on going through November, that these people are still getting cut off, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Some of them might have a week's worth of food. They're certainly not people that ever prepare for anything because they've been given everything their whole life. They don't have any sense for maintenance. People don't know these things. It simply does not exist. So you'd better realize that that's their mindset, because nothing's going to change their mindset. And with all the squawking and ridiculous yaps that you've heard, probably if you're on any other social media platform, say X or TikTok or whatever, you have heard in the last several weeks, thousands of them doing their little chirpy chirp. They're all chimping out. I'm going to get my food. I'm going to go raid this. I'm going to raid the store. They're even organizing raids, by the way. Okay. They will organize mobs and go in and just clear out a Walmart. And they're not going to care. They'll just destroy everything on the way through. Yeah, I know exactly. Breaking Spectre. I know what the solution is. Now, the Walmarts aren't going to have that. They're going to have like 1 or 2 cops maybe stationed. 1 or 2 cops are not going to do fuck all against a mob. They won't even want to. They'll just back up and be like, nope, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. I don't get paid enough to die, right? And I'm not giving a shit about necessarily like, Walmart's bottom line or their stock prices or anything else. It's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that when you have the breakdown of society, no more law and order, meaning that people actually respect natural law, common law. I'm not talking about Roman civil law because whatever, that's the law of the Jew. But the others, once you have an entire mass amount of people that do not, will not, could care less about natural law, that's when an entire society breaks down. Because a society is coherent only based upon the amount of trust that exists within it. Okay? In case anybody didn't know that. So once all the trust is gone, that's it. You better find some people that you can trust, or else guess what? You don't have a society. That's it. You're isolated. So I suggest you do it quickly because you have a week to do it. Okay? That's it. So, to continue. Western Europe and Southwestern Asia countries are the biggest users of heroin. Iran has a huge heroin-addicted population, in excess of 2 million as of 1991. There's not a single government that does not know precisely what's going on with regard to the drug trade, or anything else that I just mentioned, by the way. But individual members holding powerful positions are taken, but by the Committee of 300, through its worldwide network of subsidiaries. If any government member is quote-unquote difficult, then he or she is removed, as is in the case of Pakistan's Ali Bhutto and Italy's Aldo Moro. No one is beyond the reach of this all-powerful committee. Even though Malaysia has been successful in holding out up till now, Malaysia has the strictest anti-drug laws in the world. Possession of even a small amount is punishable by death. That would be the way to stop the populace, I suppose, but I think it would be better to put to death those that bring it into the country, maybe. Anyway, like the Clintex company of Bulgaria, the smaller countries have a direct hand in these criminal enterprises. Kintex trucks regularly ferried heroin through Western Europe in its own fleet of trucks bearing the EEC marker triangle. International Router, TIR. Trucks bearing this marker and the EEC recognition numbers are not supposed to be stopped at customs borders. TIR trucks are allowed to carry only perishable items. I don't think heroin or cocaine is a perishable item, but they are supposed to be inspected by the country from whence they originated, and documentation to this effect is supposed to be carried by each truck driver. Under international treaty obligations, this is what happens. Thus, Kintex trucks were able to load their cargo of heroin and certify it as fresh fruit and vegetables. And then make their way through Western Europe, even entering high-security NATO bases in northern Italy. In this manner, Bulgaria became one of the principal countries through which heroin was routed. The only way to stop the huge amounts of heroin and cocaine presently finding their way to markets in Europe is to end the TIR system. That will never happen. The international treaty obligations I have just mentioned were set up by the Committee of 300, using its amazing networks and control mechanisms to facilitate passage of all manner of drugs to Western Europe. Forget perishable goods, a former DEA agent stationed in Italy told me. TIR equals dope. Remember this the next time you read in the newspapers that a big haul of heroin was found in a false bottom suitcase at Kennedy Airport, and some unlucky quote-unquote mule pays the price for his criminal activity. This kind of action is only small potatoes. Sand in the eyes of the public. Right? Because those in the media are going to, lie to you. To make us think our government is really doing something about the drug menace. Take, for example, the French Connection, a Nixon program embarked upon without the knowledge and consent of the Committee of 300. The entire amount of opium heroin seized in that massive effort is somewhat less than 1/4 of what a single TIR truck carries. The Committee of 300 saw to it that Nixon paid a heavy price for a relatively small seizure of heroin. It was not the amount of heroin involved, but a matter of one whom they had helped up the ladder to the White House, believing that he could now do without their help and backing, and even go against direct orders from above. Watergate, anyone? The mechanisms of the heroin trade go like this. Wild Thai and Burmese hill tribesmen grow the opium poppy. At harvest time, the seed-bearing pod is cut with a razor or sharp knife. A resinous substance leaks through the cut and starts to congeal. This is raw opium. The crop of raw opium is made up into sticky, roundish balls. The tribesmen are paid in a kilo gold bars known as 4/10, which are minted at Credit Suisse. These small bars are used only to pay the tribesmen. The normal weight gold bars are traded on the Hong Kong market by the big buyers of raw opium or partly processed heroin. The same methods are used to pay the hill tribesmen in India who have been in this business since the days of the Mongols. The quote-unquote dope season, as it's called, sees a flood of gold traded on the Hong Kong market. Mexico has started producing relatively small amounts of heroin called Mexican brown, which is much in demand by the Hollywood crowd. Here again, the heroin trade is run by top government officials who have the military on their side. Some producers of Mexican brown are making $1 million a month by supplying their U.S. clients. On occasion, when a few Mexican federal police are prodded into taking action against the heroin producers, they are taken out by military units who seem to appear as from out of nowhere. Because the Mexican military and the Mexican cartels, both of them, they're both run by the Committee of 300. And I talked about this a couple episodes ago in the reading of this book, how this latest Mexican, if you want to call it an election, of course it wasn't. It was just basically a slaughter of rival gang members, basically, until you now have this female Jew as the president of Mexico. I wonder why, right? So anyway, to continue, such an incident occurred in November 1991 at an isolated airstrip in Mexico's opium-producing region. Federal narcotics agents surrounded the strip and were about to arrest people who were in the act of loading heroin when a squad of soldiers arrived. The soldiers rounded up the federal narcotics police agents and systematically killed all of them. This action posed a serious threat to Mexican President Gautaran, who is faced with loud demands and full-scale investigation into the murders. Gautaran is over a barrel. He can't back off from calling an inquiry, and neither can he afford to offend the Committee of 300's military. It is the first such crack in the tight chain of command in Mexico that stretches all the way to the Committee of 300. Well, of course, that was back in 92, and now, there's no cracks. They just totally took over everything in Mexico. And of course, they're running the pipelines of everything else that comes through Mexico, including working with the Chinese to get the fentanyl in, working with Soros and all of the NGOs to bring all of the bloody invaders up through what's that gap called again? Down in South America? Central America. Anyway, to bring them all the way up through, get them through that Darien Gap, thank you, and push everything straight up through Mexico. Okay, so you have to have the whole entire government completely under your control if you're able to do that. And no one's going to go against the cartels in Mexico. So they just get to run straight through like a freight train right on in. And again, this whole idea that Trump's going to shut down the border, I don't think he's going to shut down anything that's going to be of that importance getting through. And now that they're having so much more of a lucrative business in the human trafficking trade now than there was back in 92, I don't think you're going to see any of that stop either. So anyway, to continue. Raw opium from the Golden Triangle is pipelined to the Sicilian mafia and the French end of the business for refining in laboratories that infest the French coastline from Marseille to Monte Carlo. Nowadays, Lebanon and Turkey are turning out increasing amounts of refined heroin, and a large number of laboratories have sprung up in these two countries in the past 4 years. Pakistan also has a number of laboratories, but it is not the same league as France. For example, the route taken by the raw opium carriers of the Golden Crescent goes through Iran, Turkey, and Lebanon. When the Shah of Iran was in control of the country, he refused to allow the heroin trade to continue, and it was forcibly discontinued up until the time that he was, quote unquote, dealt with by the Committee of 300. Now, who, of course, replaced the Shah of Iran, but, Ayatollah Khomeini, the crazy fucking imam, Muslim, radical, batshit crazy motherfucker that, is all about Sharia law and everything else. Well, he was the one that took over after the Shah. I can't fathom that the Committee of 300, actually, you know what? Hold on. I think they did already, I think this author did already mention that the Ayatollah Khomeini was created. That's right, because he was created in France. Okay, that's all right. The Committee of 300 created him, then they took him in, and then replaced the Shah with him. Okay, that's right. That's what happened. Sorry, I forgot about that for a second. Because I was starting to think, why would someone that's actually Muslim allow that shit to happen? And of course, yeah. Anyway, answer my own question. Spectre said there's more to BRI than meets the eye to China Belt Road Initiative or One Belt Road. Oh, yeah, the new Silk Road. Yeah, that's right. I heard about that. Land routes, maritime routes, polar routes, transcontinental routes. Yep. Okay. So that's a continuation of of the old routes of moving the dope around. And probably people too nowadays. All right, to continue. Raw opium from Turkey and Lebanon finds its way to Corsica, from where it is shipped to Monte Carlo with convenience of the Grimaldi family. Pakistani laboratories, under the guise of, quote, military defense laboratories, are doing a bigger share of refining than they were 2 years ago. But the best refining is still done along the French Mediterranean coastline and in Turkey. Here again, banks play a vital role in financing these operations. That brings up another question, and I'm sorry to kind of be jumping all over the place, but makes me wonder if a lot of the labs, quote unquote labs, biolabs that Putin took out and were scattered all over Ukraine, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if a bunch of those were simply drug refining laboratories and not just strictly biolabs. That would make a hell of a lot of sense, because if the Luciferian Canaanites that are running it in Ukraine wanted a place to be able to refine their shit and then get it into Russia, that would definitely be the closest place to do it. Yes and no? Okay. Yeah, anyway, it was just a thought. To continue. So let us stop for a moment here. Are we to believe that with all the modern day vastly improved surveillance techniques, including satellite reconnaissance, available to law enforcement agencies in these countries, that this vital trade cannot be pinpointed and stopped? How is it that law enforcement agencies cannot go in and destroy these laboratories once they're discovered? If this is the case, and we still cannot interdict the heroin trade, then our anti-narcotic services ought to be known as the geriatrics and not the drug enforcement agencies. Even a child could tell our alleged drug watchers what to do. Simply keep a check on all the factories making acetic anhydride, the most essential chemical component needed by laboratories to refine heroin from raw opium. Then follow the trail. That is as simple as that. And I'm reminded of Peter Sellers in the Pink Panther series when I think of law enforcement efforts to locate heroin refining laboratories. Even someone as bumbling as the imaginary inspector would have had no trouble in following any route taken by acetic anhydride shipments from their final destination. Governments could make laws that would obligate manufacturers of acetic anhydride to keep scrupulous records showing who buys the chemical and for what purposes it is to be used. Right. But no one wants that. They want records, because records can, be subpoenaed. But do not hold your breath on this one. Remember, dope equals big business, and big business is done by the oligarchical families in Europe and the United States, Eastern liberal establishment. The drug business is not a mafia operation, nor one run by the Colombian cocaine cartels. The noble families of Britain and America's top people are not going to advertise their role in the shop windows when they have a layer of frontmen to do the dirty work. Remember, British and American quote-unquote nobility never dirtied their hands in the China opium trade. The lords and ladies were too clever for that, as were the American elite. The Delanos, Forbes, Appletons, Bacons, Boltisons, Perkins, Russells, Cunninghams, Shaws, Coolidges, Parkmans, Runewelds, Cabots, and Codmans, all of whom's names I'm sure were never changed in any, the last century. By no means is this a complete list of families in America who grew immensely wealthy from the China opium trade. Since this book is not about the drug trade, I cannot, of necessity, cover the subject in an in-depth manner. But its importance to the Committee of 300 must be emphasized. America is run not by 60 families, but by 300 families, and England is run by 100. And, as we shall see, these families are intertwined through marriage, companies, banks, not to mention ties to the black nobility, Freemasonry, also known as Jewry, the Order of St. John's of Jerusalem, which were obviously those that were on doing the first Crusades and whatnot, and the Knights Templars, which is where you get the first international banks ever. These are the people who, through their, I almost said synagogues. That was a Freudian slip. Through their surrogates, find a way to protect huge shipments of heroin from Hong Kong, Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan, and ensure they reach the marketplaces in the US and Western Europe with the minimum cost of doing business. Shipments of cocaine are sometimes interdicted and seized. That is mere window dressing. That's true. They don't really care about where or how much stuff gets caught, because they honestly know that anything that ever does get caught, they're just like, oh yeah, well that's what we'll just feed to the news organizations. Oh, that's what we'll just show on the nightly news. Ooh, the government's winning the drug war. Shut the fuck up. Okay, the drug war, or the war on drugs, put it that way, right? Most of that was to create the prison industrial complex, which I won't rehash right now because I already talked about it in a previous reading and laid it out pretty well. However, I'm just saying the war on drugs was very much about setting up the prison industrial complex in America. Okay, so to continue. Oftentimes, the shipments seized belong to a new organization trying to break into the trade. Such competition is put out of business by informing the authorities exactly where it is going to enter the U.S. and who the owners are. The big stuff is never touched. Heroin is too expensive. It is worthy of note that U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency operatives are not allowed into Hong Kong. They cannot examine any ship's manifest before it leaves the port. Well, they can't examine it, I don't think, in international waters either. But anyway, one wonders why, if there is so much international cooperation going on, what the media likes to characterize as smashing the dope trade. Okay, I'm going to put a red dot in the back of my head for this one. Everything that's going on right now with the Trump he's taking out all these shipments. He's blowing up these boats, right? And special forces are going in towards Venezuela. Okay. Has fuck all to do with the drug trade, as this guy just clearly stated. Okay. Nothing. They'll show you some pictures of some boats getting blown up. It's not the reason why they're going into Venezuela. They're going in there so they can, again, make sure that country takes a Rothschild central bank. It has fuck all to do with drugs. And the way that Trump's going about it is the most blatant, just here, we're just at war all of a sudden, basically. And it's not even going to be a declaration of war. It's just going to be, we're just going to do this. That's it. That's it. That's all that's going to happen. And yeah, Spectre, I would have expected that you would have covered that. Yes, anybody that's paying attention and knows what we just read, or knows any aspect of what we've been covering in the conspirators hierarchy of the Committee of 300, and then superimposes that whole structure and that whole control system as to what it is into the storyline of what they're trying to force feed you regarding Venezuela. No, sorry, not working, not happening. But to continue, back to this. All right. Clearly, the trade routes for heroin are protected by a higher authority. In South America, apart from Mexico, cocaine is king. The production of cocaine is very simple, unlike heroin. And great fortunes are to be made by those willing to take risks for and on behalf of the higher-ups. Right. Like everything that happened during the Iran-Contra situation. And all of those little planes that want to come in and drop stuff off in different states that are run by, I don't know, the Clintons. Anyway, as in the heroin trade, interlopers are not welcome and often finish up as casualties or victims of family feuds. In Colombia, the drug mafia is closely knit family. But such has been the bad publicity generated by the M19 guerrilla attack on the Justice Building in Bogota. M19 is the private army of the cocaine barons. And the murder of Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, a prominent prosecutor and a judge, took out a judge, that the higher authority had to rearrange matters in Colombia. Accordingly, the Ocatas of the Medellin cartel turned themselves in after being assured that they would not suffer any loss of fortune, harm of any kind, nor would they be extradited to the United States. A deal was struck that, provided they repatriated the bulk of their huge narco dollar fortunes to the Columbia banks. Oh, yeah, isn't that funny? So we're going to pressure you to make sure you put your money back in our banks. Right. Got it. No punitive action would be taken against them. Fabio, their top man, Pablo Escobar, would be held in private jails that resemble a luxury class motel room, and then be sentenced to maximum term of 2 years, to be served in the same motel jail. This deal is ongoing. Well, as we know, didn't they break Escobar out? And then I don't even know if he's still alive anymore. Spectre, you'd probably know if Escobar's fried or not. But yeah, okay, I thought he got whacked. Yeah, so his son is, I think, now running it. And even he got scooped up, probably trying to do the same sort of deal. Or they were probably trying to do the same thing to his son that they ran with him as far as a deal. And I know that the cartels broke him out once, and I don't know if he's still living either. But you see this same storyline. Like, okay, so that's what they did for Pablo Escobar. Here, we'll put you up in a glorious hotel room, basically, and you can still run things, but you're going to have to stay here because that's what we need for optics, more or less, right? So, does anything change? No. Is it all just a show? Yeah. So this deal is ongoing. Okay, well, he's dead. Well, anyway, we'll skip down here. But all right. So on the contrary, it has simply been transferred to the second string Cali cartel, and it's business as usual. For some strange reason, the Cali cartel, which is equal in size to the Medellin cartel, has been, at least up till now, largely ignored by the DEA. Right. And these different cartels, the only ones that the DEA ever gives, or DEA, or any American president ever gives a shit about, or anybody gives a shit about, are the ones that are just so violent and so crazy that they can't be controlled. So then those are the ones that get taken out as, again, optics to make it look like something's happening. And at the moment, the current flavor of terrorism is MS-13. So that's who they're going after at the moment. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to skip down a bit because we pretty much know about cocaine. Okay, I will do a little bit of stuff about Noriega. Okay, so like the Gulf War that followed in the wake of Panama, it was only after several calls from the British ambassador in Washington that Bush finally plucked up enough courage to make his totally illegal move on General Noriega. That he was supported by British press and the New York Times, a British intelligence-run newspaper, speaks volumes. Noriega was formerly the darling of Washington establishment. He frequently hobnobbed with William Casey and Oliver North, and even met with President George Bush on at least 2 occasions. Noriega was often seen at the Pentagon, where he was treated like one of the Arab potentates. And the red carpet was always laid out for him at CIA headquarters in Langley. U.S. Army intelligence and the CIA are on record as having paid him $320,000. The storm clouds begin to appear on the horizon at about the same time the Cali cartel was taking over the cocaine trade from the Ochoa brothers and Pablo Escobar, led by Senator Jesse Helms, who sold out to Ariel Sharon, no fucking surprise there, and the Israeli Hizradat party, I'm probably butchering that as well, in 1985. There suddenly became an agitation for the removal of Noriega. Right. Get away from our banks. Jesse Helms and those of a like mind were backed up by Simon Hirsch, a British intelligence agent working for the New York Times, which has been a British intelligence mouthpiece in the U.S. since the time that M16 boss Sir William Stephenson occupied the RCA building in New York. Well, I'm not going to rehash this because we talked about British intelligence and they're interconnected with everything else that's going on in America. But just to restate it, MI6 is running a lot of your aspects of media that you think are American. Okay, they're not. The information is created and perpetuated out of the Tavistock Institute, and then British secret intelligence runs it, basically. Okay. Okay. All right. Helms is the darling of Sharon faction in Washington, and Sharon was the principal gun runner in Central America and Colombia. Moreover, Helms has the respect of the Christian fundamentalists who believe in the maxim, Israel, my country, right or wrong. We're seeing a lot of this shit right now. Like, there is literally a war going on in social media. Like X, like they just changed the algorithm with X, and everybody who is anti-Zionist, who's National Socialist, who's a constitutionalist, who's America First, who's anti-Jew, who's anti-Luciferian, everything. They've all been raising high hell about this last change in algorithm, because it's like all of a sudden nobody can find anybody, and everything is getting pumped through their feed of Israel, 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 Israel. Okay, why the fuck did that happen? Oh wait, that's how I remember. Somebody bought TikTok not that long ago, right? And they decided to change the algorithm with that. And guess what? I'm sure Musk got that little pickup call from whoever, probably Netanyahu, or just literally the top people in the Committee of 300, and said, hey, time to change your algorithm. We're doing this now. And of course, he just went along with it because Musk is not above the Committee of 300. Nobody is, except maybe the gray eminence, but I won't get into that. So anyway, to continue, this whole thing about, I heard somebody, okay, just to summarize this in a single sentence. Somebody said in a post on X, which I completely agree with, he said, there is only one issue. There's only one voting issue, whether you kiss that wall or not. I mean, I tend to agree with him, and that's pretty much where a lot of Americans are right now. And it's getting the exponential wake up of that realization. It's not slowing down. I don't want it to slow down either. I think the faster that people realize the truth of what Israel is, what Zionists are, what the global Luciferian Canaanites are, and the more that they push back, trying to, shut up, Goy, the faster this will all be fixed, because simply the voice, the knowledge and voice of the people, they'll start to get interested. They'll start to look up things. They'll start to, I don't know, maybe start to come to Vocational Science of Freedom Saturday night civics and Saturday classes and really learn what's going on, right? Instead of just having a bunch of, trolls or goofy people just constantly ranting all the time, like, yeah, always negative this, negative that, like, fuck this, fuck that, right? Okay, that doesn't solve anything. Okay. Yes, you don't want to be for those things. However, it doesn't alter your situation to just completely, constantly bitch about it and just constantly be noticing. Okay. It's fine, but once you've noticed, there's a whole level of intellect that you need to continue on with to get yourself to a position where you can actually fight against them and win. And it's not being wallowed in hate. It's not being doom scrolling for 3 hours a day. That doesn't get you anywhere. Action gets you where you need to get to. And that's what we need to take, is action. So, understand that. Understand that there's a way out of the system. Now, you have to have the will to do it. You have to get beyond your fear to do it. You have to realize that staying in your little slave system, particularly over the next decade, is going to be far more detrimental than the pain, the fear, the doubt, and the focus that you're going to have to put in to learn how to get out of it. Okay? And trust me, I've done most of the legwork for you. I've been at this for 30 years, right? It's not that difficult. Get yourself vetted with the VSOF. Get your status docs done. That's how you get out. Because everything that they've got you by is by contract and consent and presumption. That's it. They don't mess with people who don't give them consent, who don't have contracts with them, and who have rebutted the presumptions. No, those people go on a different list. It's called the NCIC Do Not Detain, Do Not Arrest list. And no, it's not for terrorists. It's for people that have said no correctly, as per law. Not all these idiots out here screaming and saying, no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do that. But they still have all those contracts there. Sorry, that doesn't do you any good. Just how the law works, people. Don't shoot the messenger, right? Okay, so to continue. Thus, a powerful momentum was created to get Noriega. It is evident that Noriega could well prove a serious impediment to the international drug merchants, happy merchants, and their committee of 300 bankers, also just other forms of happy merchants. So he had to be removed before he could do some significant damage. Bush was pressured, this is why I put this in red, by his British masters to conduct an illegal search and seizure operation in Panama that resulted in the deaths of no less than 7,000 Panamanians and wanton destruction of property. Nothing to implicate Noriega as a drug dealer was ever found. So he was kidnapped and brought to the U.S. in one of the most blatant examples of international brigandry in history. This illegal action probably best meets the Bush philosophy that, quote, moral dimensions of America, read British Royal Family Committee of 300, foreign policy require us to chart a moral course through a world of lesser evils, that the real world, not black and white, very few absolutes. Right. So it was this lesser evil to kidnap Noriega rather than have him set up or end up ending the banks, upending the banks that run the drug money through Panama. All right. So the super turbo Canaanites at the top of the pyramid that run the international banks, they were like, no, action needs to be taken. Do it like this, do it like that, do it like this. They pick up the phone or they press the button, and Bush, dum-dum, who, by the way, has bloodline to the British royal family. He's a cousin, actually, distant cousin of theirs. They just pick up the phone and just say, do it. And he does. And nobody cares. Yeah, so. The Noriega case is a prototype of a monstrous one-world government actions waiting in the wings. An emboldened Bush came right out in the open. Unafraid, because we, the people, have put on a spiritual mantle that accommodates, lies, and wants no part of the truth. Right. What did Alexander Solzhenitsyn say? They are lying. We know they are lying. They know we know they are lying, but they are still lying. Right? That's kind of what you get. Right? So this is the world we have decided to accept. If it were not so, a firestorm of anger would have swept the country over the invasion of Panama, which would not have stopped until Bush was hounded from office. Nixon's Watergate transgressions pale in significance next to the many impeachable offenses committed by President Bush when he ordered the invasion of Panama to kidnap Noriega. So anyway, I'm going to skip down. Actually, we're at the end of the hour, so I'm going to skip down and then we'll restart at the green part. I'm going to skip the rest of the stuff with Noriega because it's old news. Two, it's not super relevant as to like what happened with Noriega. Like we've already laid out the why, right? So and the who that did it. Just talking about the committee of 300, not so much about like Bush. Who cares? Whatever. We know he's a patsy. We know what he did and what he didn't do. I think I'll leave the rest of it for the next reading. Now, seeing as to the fact that we're halfway through this, I'll make a headmaster decision by next Saturday, and I'll put it into the chats in Mega, whether I will continue to read this or not, because we've already gone for 7 sessions, and 7's pretty much. We're now halfway through it, and that's plenty enough so that everybody gets the idea as to what is this power structure, right? Where did it come from? Because it's pretty old. It didn't just, show up yesterday. And what are their powers? Their powers have clearly been laid out in these readings. They don't care about law. In fact, they'll write international law and international treaties in any way that they want to make sure that their drug trade, their human trafficking trade, and the slaughter of millions continues. Whether that be in wars, conflicts, bombings, whatever. That's what you're having to deal with in the world right now. We are being run by biological, Luciferian, dark occultist psychopaths. Whatever name that you want to give to them. Because they've had dozens and dozens of different names through the millennia. So to call them one thing to me is rarely short-sighted. And it's fairly short-sighted, I would say, to not remind yourself that they have been called by many, many other names. Because every time that they get caught, a couple hundred years, they'll just change their name, right? But that's why I call them the Dark Luciferian Occultists, because their god is Lucifer. They've said it. They don't shrink away from it. They've said that no one will join the New World Order who does not pledge allegiance to Lucifer. I don't think they're taking that lightly. I don't think that's a joke by them. They are what they are. So, as I said earlier tonight, hope you guys make sure that you prepare for what's coming. And please be serious about it. Do not put it off. Like, if you have time tomorrow to do something, start doing it. If you don't know what to get, or if you don't know, like, say, what to acquire, then I highly suggest that you go and watch the VSOF class that is in the self-reliance section regarding the top 100 things that disappear first in any emergency. It's in the self-reliance playlist quadrant. On YouTube, it's just the second one in. But in this class, if you have no idea what to get, if you have no idea how to be prepared, make sure that you at least think about these 100 things first. So go watch that class and, get ready. And community self-organization is also a good one as well, right? And if you want to get more into the protection and the boogaloo side of things and understanding how to protect oneself, then there's a lot more self-defense stuff on Odyssey, which is the main repository of the Vocational Science of Freedom. And on that note, if you'd like to join the Vocational Science of Freedom, if you'd like to come in and hang out with us in our mega rooms, if you'd like to share information, if you'd like to teach information, please go to vocationalscienceoffreedom.org, click on the welcome package up here, and then make sure to download it, fill it out, get your communication set up, and then send it back to me at vsof@protonmail.com. And that will get you vetted to come in and join us. And from that point on, then we'll be happy to answer your questions. I'll be happy to set you up and get you ready to do your doc set and walk you through all of the rest of the handbills that entails. Okay? All right. So that's it for tonight. I thank you all for coming. It's good to see everybody. Good to see Dave hanging out over on FTJ. And by the way, again, the VSOF is now on FTJ. Please go and check out ftjmedia.com. It has the best way. If you guys ever want to tip me as far as streaming is concerned, please do me a favor and do everyone else a favor and do it there, because FTJ does not take any of your donations, okay? Unlike Rumble, which I think takes half or some ridiculous amount of percentage, right? So, and thank you, Dave Gahari, for setting up that platform. And also thank you for allowing me to be on it. All right, everyone. I'll see all the VSOF members this coming Wednesday for VSOF Roundtable. All right, until that time, hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and make sure that you prepare for what's coming. And as always, stay safe and stay sovereign.